worldview. Now, what in the world is a worldview? Have you ever, maybe if you can go back into your childhood, some of you it won't be that far, some will be a bit further, into your childhood, and maybe you've lain on the grass in your backyard or whatever, and you look up at the clouds and you try and see different shapes and that kind of thing. So what do you see here when you see this? Fish? Shark? Anyone else? I've heard submarine. Someone said helicopter the one time. Okay, so you see different things, right? It's the same cloud, but some people see different things. So as the word itself suggests, a worldview is an overview, an overall view that you have of the world. So it's not necessarily a physical view of the world, but rather a philosophical view, an all-encompassing perspective on everything that exists and matters to us. And through our worldview is how we interpret life in a particular way. So it affects how we think, it affects how we feel, it even determines the choices that we make, from how we spend our money to where we live, to those kind of things are affected by our worldview. Some people have described a worldview as putting on colored glasses. I don't know if you've ever had those. Also, probably when you were children, you have these different colored lens glasses, and so you put these on, and if you have blue colored lens, then everything has this like blue tinge, and you put yellow ones on and it has like a yellow tinge, and so forth. And so you see everything in the tinge of that of the shade of that color. So that's kind of like a worldview. It is the lens through which you interpret all your experience and through which you make decisions. So some people can see through an atheistic worldview, an atheistic lens. Some people maybe see through a Buddhist lens or a Muslim lens or a whatever kind of lens they see through these things, or a New Age lens, for example. So if there are all these different worldviews out there, if there's all different ways of looking at the world, how do we know which one is true? We spoke about this on Sunday night, right? So if we're seeing things and how do we know which one is true? Well, the one that corresponds with reality, the one that accurately matches up with reality. But I just want to stop for a moment, and I want to just talk about this illustration of the colored glasses. I think it is a bit misleading, because when we talk about a Christian worldview, or when we talk about a biblical worldview, we are not saying that Christianity is just another way of looking at the world. And I want to make that quite clear. So I'm not saying that you put your Christian glasses on and now you see the world in your Christian kind of view. But let's just think about, why do people actually get glasses? For those who wear glasses, why do you actually get glasses? To see clearly, right? To see the world as it really is. So you wouldn't go to the optometrist and say, I really want to see the world twice as big. Can I please have lenses that make the world twice as big? Or you wouldn't go and say, please I want to see the world upside down. So please give me some glasses that makes everything upside down. No, you go to the optometrist, and if there's a problem with your eyes, they test it, they find out exactly, they make you lenses, and you wear glasses, and now you can see clearly. And maybe if you've had a problem since birth or since childhood, your childhood was, maybe you knew there was something wrong, and then your parents took you to get your eyes tested, and you got a pair of glasses, and you put them on, and for the first time, you could see the world clearly. You could see, oh wow, is that really what my brother looks like? Oh man, maybe I should take them off again. Okay? So you could see the world clearly. And in the same way, that is what we say when we say a Christian worldview. We say it's not just a way of looking at the world, but it's a description or a picture of how the world really is. Okay. Another way of describing a worldview is a mental map that we use to navigate reality. So we all have a set of beliefs that help us interpret and live in reality. So a critical question would be, is how accurate is your mental map of reality? So let's just think about a purpose of a map. What is the purpose of a map? Okay, give you direction to find your way, but it also, a good map tells you the lay of the land, right? So it tells you where the streets are, it tells you where the mountains are, it tells you where all these different places are. Okay, the cities are located. So here's a roadmap of Spain. Okay, and my dream one day is to, yes, you guessed it, go to Barcelona and visit there. And so if I took this roadmap to Spain, how do I know that this is a good roadmap of Spain? How would I know that? If it accurately matches up with Spain, okay, with the reality of Spain. So here we have a satellite picture of Spain, okay. Now can you see that the roadmap lines up quite nicely with the size of Spain, the mountains, those kind of things. So do you think that that first roadmap is a good roadmap of Spain? Okay, I would say yes. Okay, so what about this map? If I took this map to Spain, I went to the guy on the side of the road and he was selling maps and he said, no, this is an awesome map of Spain. Here we go, sold me this map of Spain. What would happen if I went to Spain with this map? I would get horribly lost. And in fact, I would probably show one of the locals, sorry, can you please tell me, where this is? And they would look at me like I'm crazy because it's not even the right language. And you get lost and confused and frustrated. And we all carry around ideas which are part of our worldview, which shape our daily choices. We all have a belief system that shapes the way that we live. Okay. I think a really good illustration of what I'm trying to say is, I could take from the series of Bones. Now, who's here watched Bones? Some of you, okay, good. Some of you have seen it. It's a really interesting series, and it's about these. So it's about this lady here is like this really smart professor, doctor person, and she's an expert in bones, and this guy here is an FBI agent. And they solve crimes together, right? But it's so interesting because there's three main kind of characters in the show, and they each have such different worldviews. And it comes across all the time in their conversations, in how they make decisions, in how they see the crime, in how they solve the crime, and all these different things. And it's really, really interesting. So let's just have a look at this. First, you have Dr. Brennan. Now, she is highly intellectual. She's one of those people that are so intellectual. She's socially awkward. She doesn't know what to say around anyone. That's why she deals with bones, so that she doesn't have to speak to people. That's how clever she is. And everything for her is about science. If you cannot prove it scientifically, it doesn't exist. Okay, it's not true. It's just it's a myth or it's a whatever. She is the scientist. Faith is completely blind for her. I'll share it in the next slide. When Booth talks about faith and stuff, she just can't understand it because it's not scientific and faith is blind for her. Okay, so now we have Booth, right? He's this real macho FBI agent, the guy who was in the Rangers, sharpshooter, all these kind of things. But he's in the show, he's a Catholic, and he brings in the religion aspect of it. Look, I don't feel they represent it that well, but it's at least there. So he brings in the religion aspect. So a lot of the time, him and Brennan are driving in the car, and they're having these conversations, and she often asks him, like, how can you believe in something like God? That's like so last century, so last millennia. Like, how can you believe in God? And they have all these really interesting conversations. And then you get Angela, right? Now, she is this hipster, hippie kind of lady. Does anyone know who this guitarist is? I keep forgetting his name. What's his name? Okay, so he's like this really famous guitarist, okay? And he plays her dad in the show. So she is into New Age, she's into psychics and mediums, and she's into all this like feeling stuff and, all this kind of thing. And so there you have like 3 different worldviews on a TV show, and they're constantly clashing with each other because the way they see the world is just so different. Now, maybe you have experienced this in your own life. Maybe you met someone really special and you started hanging out with them and you start going for coffee and, at first your conversations are just small talk like, your favorite band and, did you watch the rugby over the weekend and your favorite food and those kind of things. And then suddenly you get to the conversation of favorite TV shows and you realize that you both really like Bones. Okay, so you start watching it together. And then after one of the episodes, you say, oh, I really wonder what happens when I die. And that special someone turns around and looks at you a little bit crazy and says, what are you talking about? Nothing happens. You just die. It's just the end of your existence. And then you ask, but what about your souls? Like, we have souls. Like, what happens to those? And they're like, oh, please, man, that's just a fairy tale that someone's made up to make us feel better about life. And, when you're dead, you're dead. That's it. Thanks for playing. So you're like, no life after death. And he's like, no, definitely not. And all of a sudden, it feels that you guys are from 2 very different worlds, very different planets. Okay. So what we need to realize is that reflecting on these kind of questions, the bigger questions on life, is part of what makes us human beings. It's part of what has been going on since the beginning. Trying to answer all these kind of questions about life and make sense of the world around us. See, monkeys and flowers don't think about this stuff, but we do. We really think about this. So I did a course through RZIM before I came into Ratio Christi when I was still exploring this whole apologetic stuff. And in it, Ravi Zacharias says that every worldview needs to answer 4 big questions about life. There are 4 big questions about life that every worldview needs to answer. So the first one is origin. Where do the universe and human beings come from? I'm sure everyone at some point in their life asked this question. Okay. Then the second one is meaning. What is the purpose of our life? Why are we here? The third one is morality. How do we know what is right and wrong? And then the fourth one is destiny. What happens to us after we die? And there are many different worldviews, but most of them fall into one of 3 major categories: theism, atheism, and pantheism. So I'm just going to briefly go through each one, and just so that you can get a little bit of an idea of what each one is all about. So theism says, an infinitely perfect and all-powerful personal God exists beyond and in the universe. Theism is the worldview that says the physical universe is not all there is, and that God creates it, sustains it, and can act within it in a supernatural way. So this is the view represented by Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, which we saw a little bit of it last night. Then the second one is atheism. Now, atheism says that God does not exist beyond the universe or in it. Atheism says the universe is all that there is, no God or gods exist anywhere. The universe or cosmos is all there ever was and all there ever will be. All there ever is and all there ever will be, and it is self-sustaining. So some of the more famous atheists are guys like Karl Marx, Friedrich Nietzsche, and then there's the so-called new atheists, including Richard Dawkins, Daniel Dennett, Sam Harris, and Christopher Hitchens, who's passed away. Then we get pantheism. Now, for pantheism, God is the universe. So there's no creator beyond the universe. Creator and creation are two different ways of viewing one reality. So God is the universe, the all in all, and there's ultimately only one reality, not many different ones. And pantheism is represented by certain forms of Hinduism, Zen Buddhism, Christian Science, New Age movement, and those kind of things. Every worldview makes certain claims about reality. Okay, we've spoken a lot about that this week, that every worldview, every religion makes certain claims about reality. Christianity makes certain claims about reality. And these will not be the same as the other religions. So with all the different ones, and oftentimes they're competing. They're competing because they're saying very different things, so they're living out their lives in a very different way. How do we know which one worldview is right? Is there even a right one? Is it not just one of these things like the flavor of ice cream? You know, we kind of just pick the one that we feel most comfortable with or enjoy or whatever prefer. And how we can do this is we put them to the test. Let's put these worldviews to the test. How does it answer the four basic questions? Is it internally consistent? Like, can you actually live that out in your life? Does it correspond to reality, and is it livable? Okay, so let's have a look at this. And they say that a comparison is the mother of all clarity. So we're going to look at two major competing worldviews, atheism and Christianity, and we're going to see how they answer those four questions, and we'll take it from there. So, origin. Where does the universe come from? Where do we come from? Atheism says that only the natural world exists. So that means there's no God, there's no supernatural, there's no spiritual stuff. The cause of the universe is unknown. Okay? The cause of life itself on earth is unknown. And people have evolved over a long period of time to what we see today. Okay, so basically, atheism cannot really answer that first question. Where does the universe come from? They don't know. Okay, they have some theories, but they don't really know. Where does life itself come from? We don't know. In fact, Simon and I were talking about this today, that who's that guy that Francis Crick, what's his name? That's the guy who discovered the DNA strand. He posits that life was brought here by aliens. Okay, so that's how he explains how life came from. Okay, but obviously there's problems with that, because then where did the aliens come from? And you can continue down. So Christianity is, what is the opening sentence in the Bible? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Okay, so the opening sentence of the Bible is actually quite cool when you look at it, because it tells us, first of all, there was a beginning. So the universe didn't always exist. There was a beginning. Second of all, in the beginning was God. So God was before the beginning. He was already there. He had already existed. And then he created everything. Okay, so just that one sentence in the Bible is answering this question magnificently. That God created, and He created the universe, and He created us as well in His image, which is incredible. Okay, let's look at the second question, meaning. What is the purpose of this life? Why are we here? In atheism, there's a guy by the name of Lawrence Krauss who is hailed as the Darwin of physics. And he wrote this: "We now know that we are more insignificant than we ever imagined. If we get rid of everything we see, the universe is essentially the same." So he's talking about the world, like the world that we see. If we get rid of everything we see, the universe is essentially the same. We constitute a 1% bit of pollution in a universe. We are completely irrelevant. Wow. Doesn't that just fill you with so much excitement? You want to wake up in the morning with your, and go and skip in the fields. So in atheism, there's no ultimate meaning. That we have to create our own meaning in our lives. And so that's why people have to find meaning in things. So, you find a meaning in a cause, like rescuing endangered animals, or, I don't know, whatever it is. And then in Christianity, in Genesis 1, verse 26 to 27, God says, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heavens, over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in His own image. In the image of God, He created him, male and female. We are here to glorify God and come to know Him. The relationship is our very purpose. God is Trinity. He is eternally in relationship, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And that's how He's created us, to be in relationship with Him and with each other, to glorify Him and come to know Him. Morality. How do we know what is right and wrong? So the atheism, they say, well, we derive our morals from personal preferences, from society, from reason, and there are no absolute morals. We can't say there are absolute morals that people are subject to. Now, just think about this. If it's our personal preferences and society, how do we ever really know what is right and wrong? Because a society a few years ago, like in Germany, Hitler, it was okay to kill all the Jews. It was their personal preference to kill all the Jews. Yet, when after the war ended and they all got together and decided, actually, this was wrong, what did they do it on? They couldn't judge the guys left over from Germany on the laws of Germany, because the laws had been changed, so they weren't actually in the wrong. And they couldn't judge them from any other country because they weren't citizens of the country. So how did they judge them? From crimes against humanity. And people knew that this was not right. And where does that come from? If it's just a personal preference or a society that's telling us this, where does that come from? But in Christianity, we say that God is goodness Himself. He is the absolute standard from which we get our morality. And He's given us His word that we can know what it is. And then the last question is, there is no, for destiny, for atheism, it says there is no ultimate destiny. So this is your life. You better enjoy it. Do what you can. Because once you're dead, you're gone, and that's it. In Christianity, it says that everyone will stand before God and either spend eternity in heaven or hell, depending on whether you have put your trust in Jesus or not. It's your choice. You want to follow Jesus, put your trust in Him, then He will be standing with you on Judgment Day before God. So probably the most important contrast to make between these two views of reality is Jesus Christ. And we've heard that come up a lot this week. And because it is so important. That most people don't need a philosophical answer when we're talking about these things. Most of us are looking for a who, a savior, someone to rescue us. Do you remember the lyrics of the words that I read out on Sunday night? It said, and I need someone to believe in. Yes, someone to fill this space with grace, to look into my eyes and touch my face, to make me feel alive today. Someone. And the impact of Jesus' claims and identity makes all the difference. Makes all the difference in the question of origins, that we are of infinite value. In meaning, there is a purpose in life. Morality, Jesus did something to fix the evil in every human heart. And destiny, at the resurrection, God is beginning to remake all of creation. So now, don't be scared when you see this next slide. Okay, I'll explain it. Okay, but I really want to challenge you. I'm giving you homework to do, okay? I know it's Tuesday nights. I know you've had a long day, but I'm giving you homework to do because I've found that this has really helped me in talking to people. I'm not someone who naturally just can walk up to someone and strike a conversation and, pretend like we've been best friends for years. Okay, so this has really helped me to engage with someone who is different, from a different worldview. So here's your homework. Your homework is, I want you to find someone of a different worldview, someone who believes something differently to what you do. And you're going to ask them those 4 basic questions, okay? You're going to ask them what they believe when it comes to these things. So origin, where did the universe and human beings come from? You're going to ask them that question. Meaning, what is the purpose of life? Morality, how do we know what is right and wrong? And destiny, what happens to us after we die? Okay, you're going to say, this really mean guy at a conference that we went to said that we have to ask you these questions, so please can you just bear with me and just take some time and answer the questions. But the purpose of this interview is just to listen. I just want you to listen. I don't want you to argue. I don't want you to tell them that they're wrong, even if they tell you that aliens made the world and whatever. I want you just to listen. Okay. Now, listening should be one of the easiest things in the world, shouldn't it? I mean, you literally just have to sit there and do nothing. But it is one of the most difficult things in the world. And listening is important when we're trying to reach people and build relationships with them so that we can share the good news of Jesus eventually, okay? Listening involves humility, putting the other person first. Listening also requires patience. I don't know about you, but sometimes when I have a conversation and someone tells me something, I've already formulated about 5 answers in my mind, and so I've stopped listening to what they're actually saying so that I can get my reply in. So that's not a really great engagement, okay? You're never really going to get far in a conversation because more than likely when you talk, the other person's doing the same thing. So you never actually listen to one another. And so I think that it's so important for us to listen so that we can understand where the person is coming from. And then we have a better understanding of how we can take that conversation further down the line. Now, if they ask you questions, don't say, no, sorry, I'm not allowed to answer anything. I have to just listen to you. Take that opportunity and engage with them. But your primary objective is just to listen to what they believe. Okay. And then I was reading a really interesting article on good listening. And the author writes that good listening is an act of love. Good listening is an act of love. Poor listening rejects. Good listening embraces. Poor listening diminishes the other person, while good listening invites them to exist and to matter. And if you are able to do that, you're able to open up a relationship, an engagement with someone that will really help in pointing them to Jesus, in sharing the good news for them. So if you have this interview and you have a really good engagement and they ask you questions, you have a conversation, that's awesome. But if they don't ask anything and all you do is listen, okay, go home from that whatever, coffee or whatever, go home and think about what they said. And then take one thing that they said, and you can send them a message or whatever, and you say to them, hey, I was really thinking about what you said about this. Can we meet for coffee, and I want to just share something with you, how, what I believe or whatever. It just creates an opportunity for you to engage and to listen, but then also, obviously, the whole point of this is to share the good news that we have in Jesus. But I've found that, in my experience, people are not, there's so much in the way for them to hear the good news about Jesus that we need to kind of somehow break down these things so that they can see the cross more clearly. And that is ultimately what apologetics is all about, and it's ultimately what we want to do. We want to point people to Jesus. And if that means we need to have a scientific conversation or a philosophical or whatever kind of conversation with them, then let's have those conversations so that then when eventually we can share the good news, they can see clearly Jesus and what he has done for them and the hope that they can have in him. Cool. So you're going to promise me you're going to do it. I'm going to check up on you next week. I'm going to phone and make sure that everyone has done their homework. Okay. Thank you very much.